Captain Hansal looked out the window of his spaceship as they got close to the biggest space station he had ever seen. The station was so huge it looked like a small moon floating in space. Around it were hundreds of other ships from different alien races that Hansal could not even imagine. His spaceship was called Harmony Edge, and it carried 12 of the best humans from Earth. These people were chosen very carefully because this was the most important mission in human history. They were going to meet aliens for the first time and try to join something called the Galactic Council. Dr. Eugene was one of the people with Hansal. She was very smart and knew everything about alien life forms. She had spent years studying the few alien things that Earth had found over the years. Commander Bora was also there, and she was the best fighter and tactical person on Earth. She had won many battles during the wars on Mars. The space station was made of some kind of crystal that sparkled in the light of the nearby star. It was so big that Hansal could not see where it ended. The station had many different sections, and each section looked completely different from the others. Some parts looked like they were grown instead of built, while other parts looked like they were made by machines. As their ship got closer, Hansal felt nervous but also excited. 6 billion people on Earth were watching this mission through special communication links. Everyone on Earth wanted to know what would happen when humans finally met the aliens who ruled the galaxy. The docking process was smooth and easy. The aliens had prepared a special dock just for the human ship. When Hansal and his team stepped out of their ship, they found themselves in a huge area filled with breathable air. The aliens had changed the air just for the humans, which Hansal thought was very nice of them. The first aliens they met were very strange looking. Some had 4 arms and skin that changed colors. Others looked like walking trees with leaves made of crystal. There were even some aliens that looked like robots, but Hansal could tell they were actually alive somehow. Each alien was completely different from anything humans had ever seen. A tall alien with 4 arms came forward to greet them. This alien was called Chancellor Vex Thara, and she spoke in perfect English through a translation device. She seemed very happy to meet the humans and welcomed them to the station with what looked like a smile. The crystal tree aliens gave the humans some kind of gifts that looked like glowing stones. Dr. Eugene examined them and found out they contained vast amounts of information about science and technology. The robot-like aliens also greeted the humans by sending them data packages that contained greetings in mathematical form. Hansal was amazed by how many different types of aliens there were. Some were very small and flew around like insects. Others were huge and had to move very slowly so they would not accidentally hurt the smaller aliens. There were aliens that seemed to be made of pure energy and others that looked like they were made of living metal. The welcome ceremony was beautiful and peaceful. All of the aliens seemed genuinely happy to meet humans and learn about Earth. Most of them asked questions about human culture and technology through their translation devices. Hansal began to feel hopeful that this mission would be successful, but then Hansal noticed something that made him worried. There was a group of aliens in one corner of the room who were not celebrating. They were talking quietly among themselves and looking at the humans with what seemed like anger or fear. These aliens were much bigger than the others and looked very dangerous. The leader of this group was called War Prime Thorask, and he was from a species called the Kraxans. Thorask was 3 meters tall and had claws that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. His eyes were the eyes of a predator, and when he looked at Hansal, the human captain felt like he was being hunted. Dr. Eugene came to Hansal during the welcome party, and she looked very worried. She had been studying the information that the aliens had given them, and what she found was not good. Many of these alien species had changed themselves genetically to remove all aggressive behavior. They had made themselves peaceful by removing the parts of their nature that made them want to fight or compete. This meant that these aliens saw humans as dangerous because humans still had all of their natural instincts for survival and competition. The aliens thought that human nature was a disease that would spread to other species and destroy the peace they had worked so hard to create. Commander Bora had been studying the station while the others were at the party. She discovered that the defensive weapons on this station were more powerful than all of Earth military combined. The aliens had weapons that could destroy entire planets in just a few hours. They had the power to eliminate any species that they saw as a threat. That night Hansal could not sleep. He kept thinking about what Dr. Yujin and Commander Bio-Ra had told him. The aliens had invited humans to join the Galactic Council, but it seemed like they expected humans to change themselves to become peaceful like all the other species. Saul realized that the aliens did not understand that humans became strong exactly. Because they never gave up fighting, they did not understand that human creativity and progress came from their competitive nature. The things that made humans successful were exactly the things that scared these aliens. The next morning would be the official ceremony where humans would become members of the Galactic Council, but Hansal had a bad feeling that something terrible was going to happen. He could see in the eyes of War Prime Thorisk that the Kraxans had already decided that humans were too dangerous to live. Hansal made a decision that would change everything. He quietly sent a secret message to Earth using a special code that only the Earth military would understand. The message was simple, but it meant that Earth should prepare for the worst possible outcome on Earth. Fleet Admiral Kyung-ho received the message in his secret command center deep under the ocean. He had known Hansal for 20 years, and they had fought together in many battles. If Hansal was sending this type of message, it meant that humanity was in terrible danger. The Admiral began to activate secret protocols that had been planned for years but never used before. These protocols were designed to protect humanity if the galaxy turned out to be hostile. Nobody on Earth wanted to use these protocols because they were designed for total war. Hansal did not know it yet, but his message had just started a chain of events that would change the entire galaxy forever. The aliens thought they were going to judge humanity, but instead they had awakened something that would judge them. The irony was that humans had come to the galaxy hoping for peace and friendship, but they might end up having to fight the biggest war in galactic history just to survive. The big ceremony started early in the morning when the alien sun came up. Captain Hansal and his 12 team members stood in the center of a massive room that was bigger than any building on Earth. Around them were representatives from all 300 alien species that belonged to the Galactic Council. The room was so huge that Hansal felt like a tiny insect standing in the middle of it. Giant screens showed pictures of Earth floating in space, while strange music played that was supposed to represent peace and unity among all the different species. Dr. Yujin whispered translations to Hansal, but her voice was getting more worried with each word she spoke. Chancellor Vexthera started speaking in the alien language while her 4 arms moved in complicated patterns. Dr. Yujin translated quietly and told Hansal that the Chancellor was not just welcoming humans to the Council, she was describing something called a cleansing process that all new species had to go through to join the peaceful galaxy. War Prime Thorisk stepped forward. When the Chancellor finished talking, his huge body cast a dark shadow over all the humans. His translation device spoke in perfect English, and every word sounded like a threat. He announced that the Council had been studying human culture and biology very carefully. What Thorisk said next made Hansal's blood run cold. The aliens had discovered that humans still had genes that made them aggressive and competitive. Other alien species had removed these genes from their bodies thousands of years ago, but humans still had them. The aliens said this made humans very dangerous. Thorisk showed evidence on the giant screens, human movies and books that showed war and fighting human sports, where people competed against each other, human history that was full of battles and conquests. The aliens said all of this proved that humans would bring violence and chaos to the peaceful galaxy. Suddenly, energy barriers appeared around all 12 humans. Hansal realized they had been trapped. The aliens had planned this from the very beginning. They never intended to let humans join the Council peacefully. They wanted to eliminate humanity before humans could spread their dangerous nature to other worlds. The vote happened very quickly. Almost every major alien species voted to eliminate humanity immediately. They said humans were too dangerous to be allowed to live, and that the galaxy would be safer without them. The few aliens who voted against elimination were quickly silenced by the other. Hansal watched in horror as the execution order was confirmed, but something strange happened that the aliens did not expect. Instead of begging for mercy or trying to make deals, Hansal started to smile. That smile made even the dangerous predator aliens feel afraid. Dr. Yujin activated a hidden recording device that would send everything that happened back to Earth. Commander Bio-Ra began transmitting detailed information about the alien weapons and defenses to Earth Military Command. The other humans stood up straight and faced their death with courage that their ancestors had shown in famous battles throughout history. The aliens expected the humans to be scared or to cry or to beg for their lives. Instead, the humans acted like warriors who were ready to die for something important. This confused the aliens because they had forgotten what real courage looked like. After thousands of years of artificial peace war, Prime Thorisk personally killed Captain Hansal with his own claws. He expected to see fear in the human captain eyes, but instead he saw something that would give him nightmares for the rest of his very short life. He saw pity Hansal felt sorry for the aliens because they had no idea what they had just done to Hansal. Last words were broadcast across every communication channel in the galaxy so that every alien would hear them. He said, "You have no idea what you have just awakened." These words would prove to be the most prophetic statement ever made in galactic history. Back on Earth, 6 billion humans watched their brave representatives die with honor. The reaction was immediate and more violent than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Peaceful protesters who had never wanted war suddenly demanded revenge. Scientists who had dreamed of galactic friendship began designing weapons that could destroy entire worlds. Fleet Admiral Kyung-ho activated something called the Annihilation Protocol. This was a secret plan that had been developed over 50 years in case the galaxy turned out to be hostile. Hidden shipyards throughout the solar system suddenly came online and began building warships designed for one purpose: complete annihilation of any species that threatened humanity. The aliens had made their judgment based on human history, but they failed to understand humanity's greatest gift, the ability to become whatever the situation required. They wanted to eliminate humans because of their potential for violence. Now they would face the full reality of what humans could become when everything they loved was threatened. War. Prime Thorisk sent a message to his home fleet telling them that the human threat had been successfully eliminated. He expected to be praised for protecting galactic peace. Instead, he had just signed his own species' death warrant. The Kraxons were about to learn why every successful predator species in Earth history had eventually become prey to something even deadlier. The Council aliens celebrated their victory over the dangerous humans. They believed they had saved galactic civilization from a species that would have brought chaos and war to their peaceful worlds. They had no idea that they had just started the most devastating war in galactic history. Within hours of the execution, Earth began implementing plans that had been secretly developed for decades. Human infiltrators who had been placed throughout alien space years earlier began activating hidden weapons that had been disguised as peaceful technology, began revealing their true purpose. The galaxy was about to learn what total war meant when fought by a species that had evolved through millions of years of constant conflict. The aliens thought they were eliminating a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. They did not realize they had just awakened an apex predator that had been hiding its true capabilities. The peaceful galaxy was about to become a hunting ground, and humanity was about to show every alien species what it meant to be the most dangerous predators in the universe. The execution of 12 humans had doomed 300 alien species to extinction. The Council had wanted to preserve their artificial peace, but instead they had guaranteed that the galaxy would burn. 3 days after the aliens killed Captain Hansal and his team, the first human response reached the Council station. It was not a fleet of warships or a desperate message begging for mercy. It was a single transmission broadcast on every frequency that aliens used to communicate across the galaxy. A young woman named So Young appeared on the transmission. She was Earth's new Director of Galactic Affairs, and she spoke from what looked like a simple office on Earth. Her voice was calm and steady, but the words she spoke were absolutely terrifying in what they meant for every alien in the galaxy. So Young thanked the Council for showing their true nature and for making it impossible for humans and aliens to ever live together peacefully. She said humanity had always hoped to join galactic civilization as friends and partners, but the Council had made it clear that only complete submission or total extinction were the only choices they would accept. Therefore, humanity was officially cutting off all contact with every Council species. Earth was starting something called the Annihilation Protocol, and every Council world would be systematically destroyed until either humanity was extinct or the galaxy was cleansed of species that threatened human survival. There would be no negotiations, no mercy, and no survivors among those who had voted for humanity execution. The council representatives laughed at the human transmission and dismissed it as desperate threats from a primitive species. Their intelligence report said that Earth technology was hundreds of years behind their own. Humans had barely managed to travel between stars, while council species had weapons that could crack planets in half and shields that could survive the explosion of Starswar. Prime Thorisk laughed loudest of all. His species had conquered dozens of worlds through superior firepower and tactical brilliance. He announced that the Kraxan 7th Fleet would leave immediately for Earth to finish what the Council had started. 67 ships carrying enough weapons to turn Earth into melted rock began their journey through hyperspace. They never made it to Earth. The first sign of trouble came when the Kraxan fleet simply disappeared from all sensors. 18 hours into their journey, there were no distress signals, no debris fields, no evidence of what had happened to nearly 10,000 elite Kraxan warriors and their powerful ships. Search and rescue missions found nothing but empty space where the fleet should have been. Admiral Tehian commanded Earth First Response Fleet from the bridge of a ship called Retribution. This ship did not officially exist in any Earth database and had been built in secret shipyards that the aliens knew nothing about. While the Council had been studying human culture, human intelligence had been analyzing every aspect of alien technology and military capabilities. For decades, the Kraxan fleet had been eliminated using tactics that would have been impossible for any Council species to imagine. Humans had always been ambush predators, and they had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare through constant conflict, while other species achieved peace by changing their biology or suppressing their instincts. Humans had achieved peace through superior firepower and the willingness to use it. Dr. Minho was Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, and he had predicted the Council response with frightening accuracy. The alien species had become so used to their sanitized version of peace that they had forgotten the basic nature of survival. They expected conflicts to follow their carefully established rules with proper warnings, formal declarations, and opportunities for surrender. Humanity offered none of these courtesies. The war had begun the moment they executed Captain Hansal and his team. Every human in the galaxy was now a soldier in a conflict that would end only with humanity's survival or extinction. There would be no rules of engagement, no protection for civilians, and no mercy for any species that had supported the execution. The second human strike came against the Trilaxian homeworld, specifically targeting Chancellor Vexthera family compound. During her daughter wedding celebration, the attack was surgical, eliminating only the Chancellor bloodline while leaving the rest of the city completely untouched. The message was clear: humanity could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. Commander Yunji led the infiltration team that placed quantum explosives in the Trilaxian government complex. Her squad consisted of 12 humans who had undergone genetic modifications that made them invisible to alien sensors. They walked through the heart of Trilaxian civilization for 6 days, gathering intelligence and placing charges with the patience of natural-born hunters. The explosions happened at exactly the same time across 17 different worlds, each targeting a council member who had voted for humanity execution. The attacks were coordinated with precision that should have been impossible for a species that had supposedly just learned about the council existence, but humanity had been preparing for this war for decades. Every diplomatic contact, every cultural exchange, every piece of technology shared with human researchers had been part of an elaborate intelligence-gathering operation. Earth governments had learned from history that hoping for peace while preparing for war was the only way to ensure survival. The Council species began to realize that they had made a fundamental error in judgment. They had evaluated humanity based on their current technological capabilities, but they had failed to understand humanity's greatest weapon: adaptability. Humans did not just learn from their mistakes, they learned from their enemies' strengths and made those strengths their own. The aliens had spent thousands of years perfecting their peaceful civilization, but they had forgotten how to fight. Humans had never stopped learning how to kill more efficiently. The Council had eliminated their own survival instincts, while humans had refined theirs into an art form. Within 2 weeks, human infiltrators had assassinated the leadership of 12 different alien species. Each death was carried out in a way that sent a specific message to the surviving aliens. Humanity was not just capable of reaching them anywhere, they were capable of killing them in ways that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about warfare. The galaxy began to understand that they had not eliminated a primitive threat. They had awakened an apex predator that had been pretending to be civilized. The Council had wanted to judge humanity, but instead humanity was about to judge them, and the verdict was extinction. Within 2 weeks of the first human strikes, panic began spreading throughout Council space. Like a deadly disease, species that had enjoyed thousands of years of peace suddenly found themselves checking shadows and questioning every interaction with unknown beings. The humans had demonstrated an ability to infiltrate the most secure facilities in the galaxy, and no one knew how many more were already in position waiting to strike. General Donghyan coordinated Earth psychological warfare campaign from a mobile command center that never stayed in the same location for more than 6 hours. His team had studied every Council species' fears and cultural weaknesses, developing targeted terror tactics that would drive entire civilizations to paranoia and eventual collapse. The Vorthan Kree beings discovered that their sacred groves were dying from an unknown disease that turned their beautiful crystal leaves black and brittle. The disease spread from world to world, following trade routes and communication networks with impossible precision. The Vorthans did not realize that Dr. So-Min, xenobiology team, had designed the pathogen specifically to target their unique cellular structure. The pathogen was not just killing their trees, it was destroying their entire way of life. The Vorthans had built their civilization around the concept of living in harmony with their forest worlds. When the forest began dying, the Vorthans lost not just their homes but their entire cultural identity. The mechanical synthetics found their quantum networks being infiltrated by viruses that caused them to question their own existence. Ancient AI beings that had operated with perfect logic for thousands of years suddenly experienced something they had never known. Doubt programmer Hyun Woo had spent 5 years studying synthetic psychology to develop code that could induce existential crisis in artificial minds. The virus did not destroy the synthetics directly. Instead, it made them question whether their existence had any meaning, whether their logic was flawed, whether their creators had made mistakes in their programming. The synthetics began to shut themselves down voluntarily, unable to cope with the uncertainty that the human virus had introduced into their minds. But the most devastating campaign was reserved for the Kraxans. Their warrior culture had been built on the concept of honorable combat and personal strength. Humanity chose to destroy that culture by making every Kraxan victory feel hollow and meaningless. Captain Wu Jin led stealth teams that eliminated Kraxan military leaders through methods that completely went against their understanding of warfare. Poison, sabotage, and assassination became humanity weapons of choice against a species that valued direct confrontation above all else. Kraxan warriors began finding their comrades dead without any sign of struggle, creating a fear that spread through their ranks like wildfire. The psychological impact was exactly what human strategists had calculated. A species that had conquered worlds through superior individual combat found themselves hunted by an enemy they could not see, could not fight, and could not understand. Kraxan society began to collapse as their warriors lost faith in their own abilities. War Prime Thorisk, who had personally executed Captain Hansal, found himself trapped in his own fortress as human infiltrators eliminated his guards one by one. The messages they left behind were written in perfect Kraxan script, describing exactly how his family had died and where they would strike next. Thorisk had killed thousands of enemies in honorable combat, but he had never experienced the terror of being hunted by an invisible enemy. Every shadow might hide a human assassin, every meal might be poisoned, every ally might be a human spy. The great Kraxan warrior was reduced to cowering in his own home, afraid to sleep, afraid to eat, afraid to trust anyone. The council called emergency sessions to coordinate their response, but they discovered that humanity had anticipated this as well. Every meeting was compromised by human intelligence networks that had been established decades earlier. Council plans were known to Earth before they were fully formulated, allowing human forces to counter every strategy before it could be implemented. Dr. Young-Soo, Earth leading expert on galactic politics, had spent 15 years building relationships with minor council species that felt oppressed by the major powers. When the war began, these species found themselves receiving human technology and military support in exchange for intelligence and safe passage. The galaxy began to fracture along lines that the Council had spent centuries trying to eliminate. Species that had harbored old grudges suddenly found themselves with the means to settle scores. Human weapons flowed to rebel groups and independence movements throughout Council space, turning the galaxy into a patchwork of conflicts that stretched Council resources beyond their limits. Ancient rivalries that had been suppressed by Council authorities suddenly erupted into open warfare. The Zilithians attacked their traditional enemies, the Morphics, using human-supplied weapons. The Quellian Liberation Front began bombing Trilaxian colonies with human explosives. The galaxy that had been peaceful for centuries was now burning with dozens of separate conflicts. Admiral Kyung-ho watched the chaos unfold from Earth Command Center, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Humanity had never wanted this war, but they had prepared for it. With the same thoroughness that had taken them from caves to the stars, the Council species had chosen to see human nature as a flaw to be eliminated, but it was actually their greatest strength. The irony was not lost on him. The Council had executed humanity diplomatic team to prevent humans from spreading their infection of aggression and competition throughout the galaxy. Instead, they had forced humanity to demonstrate exactly why those traits had evolved in the first place. Every successful species in Earth history had eventually faced a simple choice: adapt or die. The Council species had chosen a third option: stagnation, and now they were discovering that the universe did not care about their preference for peace over survival. Colonel HFY reported that human forces had successfully captured 3 Council research stations, gaining access to technology that would accelerate Earth military development by centuries. The prisoners taken during these operations were being treated with the same mercy that had been shown to Captain Hansal and his team. There was no mercy. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be civilized and revealed what they truly were underneath the diplomatic facade they had worn for so long. 6 months after the execution of Earth diplomatic team, the first phase of humanity response was complete. 3 major Council worlds had been turned into lifeless rocks. 17 species had been driven to complete extinction, and the galactic government that had maintained peace for 2 centuries was collapsing into chaos and civil war throughout the galaxy. But this was only the beginning of humanity true response. Admiral Yun Seo stood on the bridge of a massive ship called Inevitable, which was the flagship of humanity Annihilation Fleet. The enormous vessel stretched for 20 kilometers and carried enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. It was one of 50 such ships that had been constructed in hidden shipyards throughout the outer solar system, each one designed for a single purpose: the complete elimination of any species that threatened humanity's survival. Technology that powered these ships was a fusion of human ingenuity and captured Council science, but improved far beyond anything the aliens had imagined possible. Dr. Taemin research teams had taken Council energy weapons and increased their efficiency by 300%. Commander Yune engineers had developed shields that could withstand direct hits from stellar mass weapons. Most importantly, Captain Seung-ho tactical teams had solved the problem of faster-than-light travel that had limited human expansion for decades. The new drive systems could move the Annihilation Fleet across the galaxy in a matter of weeks, making it impossible for Council forces to predict where humanity would strike next. The fleet's first target was the Kraxan homeworld Thorisk Prime. The planet housed 8 billion Kraxan warriors and their families, protected by defensive systems that had never been breached in their species' 1,000-year history of warfare. The Kraxans had built their civilization around the concept of impregnable fortresses and overwhelming military might. They were about to discover that humanity had studied their defenses for decades and had developed weapons specifically designed to counter every advantage the Kraxans possessed. The attack began with a bombardment that lasted exactly 17 minutes. The same amount of time it had taken for the Council to vote for humanity execution. Lieutenant Colonel the Jin coordinated the orbital strikes with precision that turned the planet's surface into molten glass. Every major city, military installation, and government complex was eliminated in the opening salvo. The Kraxans had prepared for orbital bombardment. Their underground bunker systems could survive planetary extinction events, and their population had been trained to endure siege warfare for centuries. They expected the humans to land troops and fight a grinding campaign through their tunnel networks for years. Instead, humanity demonstrated why they had become the dominant species on a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. Dr. Hyenru Biological Warfare Team had created a pathogen specifically designed to target Kraxan physiology. The organism was released into the planet atmosphere, water supply, and soil through microscopic delivery systems that were invisible to all known detection methods. Within hours, every Kraxan on the planet began dying from the inside out. The pathogen was elegant in its simplicity and horrifying in its effectiveness. It targeted the specific genetic markers that made Kraxans such effective predators, turning their own biological advantages against them. Their enhanced metabolism accelerated the disease, their improved healing factors spread it faster, and their pack-bonding instincts ensured that no individual could escape. Infection War Prime Thorask, the alien who had personally executed Captain Hansal, spent his final hours in agony as the disease dissolved his organs from within. His last message to the Council was a warning that humanity represented a threat beyond anything the galaxy had ever encountered, but by then it was far too late. The Kraxan species, which had conquered dozens of worlds and terrorized entire sectors of space, was extinct within 72 hours of the human attack. Their homeworld remained intact but completely lifeless, a monument to the consequences of underestimating human capabilities. The psychological impact on the remaining Council species was immediate and devastating. The Kraxans had been the Council primary military force, the species that other aliens feared and respected if humanity could eliminate them so easily. No Council world was safe from human vengeance. Commander Wusung reported that 14 species had already withdrawn from the Council and were attempting to establish diplomatic contact with Earth. They hoped that by abandoning the organization that had voted for humanity execution, they might be spared from the fate that had befallen the Kraxans. They were completely wrong in their assumptions. Admiral Yon Seo had her orders directly from Earth leadership. Every species that had participated in the Council vote would be eliminated. There would be no exceptions, no mercy, and no negotiations. The galaxy had chosen to view humanity as a threat to be eliminated, and humanity would prove them absolutely correct. The Annihilation Fleet divided into smaller task forces, each targeting a different Council world. The attacks were coordinated to occur simultaneously across the galaxy, ensuring that no species could warn others or prepare adequate defenses. Within a single day, the Council would lose half of its member species. The universe was about to learn what total war meant when waged by a species that had spent their entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of survival through violence. The aliens had made the mistake of thinking that humans were just another species that could be intimidated or controlled. They were about to discover that humans were the apex predators of the galaxy, and that they had just awakened something that would not stop until every threat to humanity was completely eliminated from existence. 1 year after the execution of Captain Hansal and his diplomatic team, the Galactic Council ceased to exist as any kind of governing body. Of the 300 species that had voted for humanity elimination, only 47 remained alive. The survivors had been spared not out of mercy, but because they served as living reminders of what happened to those who threatened human survival. Emperor Jun Ho, formerly Fleet Admiral Kyung Ho, ruled the galaxy from his flagship Eternal Vigilance, a mobile command center that never remained in the same star system for more than a few days. The title had been granted to him by the unanimous vote of every remaining alien species who had learned that cooperation with humanity was much preferable to extinction. The galactic map had been completely redrawn according to human preferences. Earth controlled the central sectors of the galaxy, while the surviving Council species occupied carefully monitored territories under constant human supervision. Any species that had attempted to develop military Technology beyond basic self-defense had been eliminated as a precautionary measure. Dr. Sora, now serving as Earth Minister of Galactic Affairs, reviewed the daily reports from across human space. Her office aboard the Eternal Vigilance received intelligence from every corner of the galaxy, ensuring that no threat to humanity could develop undetected. The irony was not lost on her that the Council-owned surveillance networks had been repurposed. To serve their conquerors, the surviving aliens had been forced to adapt to a new reality where humanity occupied the apex of galactic civilization. The Trilaxians, once proud diplomats, now served as translators and cultural liaisons between human administrators and alien populations. The Vorthans had become agricultural specialists, using their botanical knowledge to terraform worlds for human colonization. Even the mechanical synthetics had been reprogrammed to serve human interests, their vast computational abilities directed towards solving problems that benefited Earth's expanding empire. The AI beings that had once considered themselves superior to biological life now found themselves as tools in the hands of the species they had dismissed as primitive. General Yuna commanded the Pacification Corps, a military force responsible for maintaining order throughout human space. Her soldiers were stationed on every world with significant alien populations, ensuring that the lessons of the Council War were never forgotten. The aliens had learned to be grateful for human protection, even if that protection came at the cost of their independence. Galaxy had achieved a new kind of peace, one based not on the Council-failed philosophy of universal harmony, but on humanity-proven ability to eliminate any threat to the established order. There were no more wars between species because there was only one species with the power to wage them. Captain De Jong, son of the executed captain Hansol, served aboard the ship formerly called Retribution, now renamed Hansol. Vengeance, in honor of his father, sacrificed the ship, patrolled the outer rim of human space, watching for any signs of rebellion or resistance among the alien populations. The younger Hansol had inherited his father's diplomatic skills, but he had learned that diplomacy was most effective when backed by overwhelming force. The transformation of galactic civilization had been swift and absolute. Alien species that had spent thousands of years developing art, literature, and philosophy now focused their efforts on serving human needs. Their greatest achievements became footnotes in the history of human expansion, their proudest moments reduced to cautionary tales about the consequences of opposing Earth. Will Dr. Minsu, Earth-leading xenorchaeologist, studied the ruins of the old Council Station where the diplomatic mission had been executed. The site had been preserved as a monument to human determination, a reminder that no slight against humanity would go unpunished. Tourists from across the galaxy came to see the place where the old order had died and the new one had been born. Memorial featured a simple plaque with the names of the 12 humans who had died that day, along with Captain Hansol's final words, "You have no idea what you have just awakened." Below that, in the script of every known language, was humanity's new motto. Never again. The galaxy had wanted to eliminate humanity to preserve their version of peace. Instead, they had created an empire that would ensure no human would ever again face extinction at the hands of alien judgment. The Council had been right to fear humanity's potential for violence, but they had been wrong to think they could eliminate it. Peace, the surviving aliens learned, was not the absence of conflict, it was the absolute dominance of one species over all others, maintained through the constant threat of annihilation for any who dared to challenge the established order. Humanity had finally found its place in the galaxy, not as the junior partners the Council had envisioned, but as the apex predators they had always been destined to become. The stars belonged to Earth now, and they would belong to Earth forever. The execution of 12 diplomats had cost the galaxy its freedom, but it had given humanity the universe. And in the cold mathematics of survival, that was a trade that every human could live with. The aliens had learned too late that there were some species that could not be tamed, could not be changed, and could not be eliminated. Humanity was one of those species, and now the entire galaxy would serve as a reminder of what happened when you tried to cage an apex predator. The new galactic order was simple and absolute. Humanity ruled and everyone else obeyed. There would be no more councils, no more votes, and no more threats to human survival. The galaxy had chosen war, and humanity had won it so completely that the very concept of resistance had become extinct. In the end, The Council had gotten exactly what they feared most: a galaxy shaped by human nature where only the strong survived and the weak served. But they had also gotten something they never expected: a peace more lasting and complete than anything their artificial harmony had ever achieved. The stars were quiet now, not because all species had learned to live together, but because only one species had the power to make noise.